Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're tackling something quite specific, a blueprint for really truly understanding a text. We're going beyond just reading.
Exactly. We're looking at a highly systematic method, a framework designed for deep textual mastery. Think of it as moving from just casual acquaintance with a book to genuine expertise.
And the source we're pulling from is a guide called How to Study Your Holy Book by K. Arthur. What's striking is just how structured it is. It's less theory, more a step-by-step manual. So our goal today is pretty clear. We want to lay out this whole multi-stage study process for you.
The idea is that by the end, you'll have a solid toolkit for analyzing texts thoroughly without getting, completely overwhelmed by all the information.
Okay, let's get into the framework itself. It hinges on discipline and, crucially, sequence. The source insists on 3 core stages, or pillars, that you have to tackle in order.
Absolutely. That sequence is vital. Skipping ahead really undermines the whole process, according to this method. You build understanding layer by layer.
Pillar 1 is observation. The Arabic term mentioned is gosi. This is purely about gathering the raw data.
Just seeing what the text says, who's involved, what happens, where, when. No interpretation yet, just the facts.
Got it. Then, once you've done that thoroughly, you move to pillar 2. Interpretation, or we'll see.
Right, this is where you start asking, okay, what does all that data mean? You connect the dots, look at the context, try to figure out the author's original message.
And the final step, pillar 3, is application, taking that understanding and putting it into practice.
Yes, and the source is quite emphatic here. Knowledge that doesn't lead to action or some kind of change is considered incomplete. Application is where the understanding becomes transformative.
So observation, interpretation, application. In that order. But where does this whole process actually begin?
It starts with something foundational, something the source calls studying the whole book. Before you zoom in on any single detail, you have to grasp the entire thing.
The big picture first.
Absolutely. The macro view is non-negotiable. And this is where it gets demanding.
Ah, yes. The reading requirement. The guide recommends reading the entire text. How many times?
Between 5 and 20 times. Cover to cover.
5 to 20. Okay, I can hear listeners thinking, 20 times. Who has time for that? How does the method justify that kind of commitment?
It frames it as essential groundwork. It's not about just reading passively, it's about immersion. Each pass builds a different layer of understanding. Without that complete overview, the risk of misinterpreting details later is just too high.
So it's about preventing errors by knowing the whole context first.
Precisely. Context is king in this method. And you can't truly grasp the context of a single sentence without knowing the flow of the entire argument, the whole narrative.
Let's break down those, say, 20 readings. What's happening mentally during that process? It can't just be repetition for repetition's sake.
No, definitely not. Think of the first maybe 1 to 5 readings as achieving basic fluency. You're getting the storyline down, identifying the main characters or concepts, the general tone and style. You stop wondering what happens next and start internalizing the overall flow.
Okay, so you got the basics. What about reading, say, 6 through 10? What changes?
That's when your brain starts picking up on the structure, the architecture of the text. You begin to notice patterns, repeated phrases, how paragraphs connect, where the author shifts topics. You're moving from just following the plot to seeing how the author built the argument.
Like seeing the seams and the structure.
Exactly. You start noticing literary devices, maybe lists or contrasts the author sets up.
And then those final readings, say 10 up to 20, that must be about really deep saturation.
That's right. By that point, you're almost subconsciously cross-referencing. You read something in chapter 3, and your mind instantly connects it to something similar in chapter 12. It's about building this incredibly dense mental map of the entire text.
So that heavy repetition inoculates you against taking things out of context later on.
Perfectly put. It's the primary defense mechanism against proof texting or misunderstanding the author's full intent. That 5 to 20 reading mandate, it's really about embedding the whole context in your mind before you dare to analyze a single part.
Okay, that reframes it significantly. It's strategic immersion, not just brute force reading.
Absolutely. And that deep familiarity naturally leads into the specific techniques for advanced observation. How do you make those readings count? By actually documenting what you're seeing.
Right. The method isn't just read a lot. It gives you tools for that observation stage. It emphasizes using the classic investigative questions, the 5 W's and an H.
Yes. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. Systematically answering these for the entire book ensures you capture the essential context.
Let's quickly walk through them. Who wrote it and to whom?
Crucial starting points. Knowing the author's background, their potential biases, their purpose, and understanding the original audience, their situation, their prior beliefs, that shapes everything.
Then what? What's the main subject, the core message or event?
This forces you to summarize the central topic. What's the book about at its core? It helps define the boundaries.
And why? Why was this written? What prompted it?
The intent or occasion. Was it written as celebration or crisis? To teach, to warn, to encourage. The why gives you the rhetorical key. A command might sound harsh until you know the desperate why behind it.
That makes sense. A crucial layer.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Then you have when and where, the historical and geographical setting.
Which helps avoid reading modern ideas back into an ancient text. Anachronism.
Exactly. Understanding the original time and place is fundamental. Answering these 6 questions thoroughly essentially builds your context map for the entire work.
Okay, so beyond those core questions, the method pushes for looking at the way things are written, the literary structure.
Yes. Recognizing the author's choices. How is the information organized? Look at chapter titles, paragraph breaks, any lists the author provides.
Lists seem simple, but they often signal importance or deliberate grouping, right?
Very much so. They show the author categorizing ideas, creating hierarchies, or drawing parallels. You need to note those down.
And the method also highlights looking for comparisons and contrasts.
How does the author set things side by side? If they define good here and bad right next to it, that contrast is intentional, designed to sharpen the meaning of both.
Which leads naturally to tracking recurring keywords or phrases.
This is huge. If a specific word, faith, law, kingdom, whatever it might be, appears again and again, it's almost certainly central to the main theme. You have to track those key terms throughout the entire book.
Now, for the practical side, how do you keep track of all this during those multiple readings? The method suggests something quite visual.
Ah, yes. Physical marking and color coding. This is where you turn the text itself into a kind of data visualization.
So literally using colored pens or highlighters.
Exactly. The idea is to assign specific colors to key concepts you've identified as important, maybe through tracking those recurring words.
Could you give an example?
Sure. You might decide, say, blue is for every mention of God or divine actions. Maybe red marks references to sin or human error. Green could be for commands or instructions, and perhaps yellow for promises or blessings.
And the benefit isn't just marking, it's the synthesis afterwards.
Precisely. After you've marked the text consistently through several readings, you can flip to the pages and visually see patterns. You might see a chapter is predominantly green, meaning it's heavy on commands. Another might glow yellow with promises.
It allows for rapid visual analysis of themes across the whole book.
It really accelerates that synthesis process. It helps bridge the gap between just collecting observations and starting to see the bigger picture, the connections.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So you've done your 5 of 20 readings, you've answered the 5 W's and H, you've marked keywords, maybe color-coded, you have this wealth of observed data. What's the absolute next critical step?
Now you have to synthesize. You have to take all those details and find the unifying core. This brings us to identifying the trunk. The trunk metaphor. Explain that. If observation was like gathering all the leaves, twigs, and branches, finding the trunk is identifying the main subject and the main purpose of the entire tree. It's the single core idea that holds everything else together. The central pillar of the book itself. Exactly. The goal is to articulate what is this book fundamentally about, the subject, and what is its primary reason for being written, the purpose. If you can't state those clearly and concisely, you only understand the parts, not the whole.
And how do you actually isolate this trunk? It sounds challenging, especially with a long or complex book.
It requires serious intellectual distillation. The method demands you summarize the entire book, its main subject and purpose, in its single sentence, or at most, a very short paragraph.
Wow, 1 sentence for a whole book. That forces you to filter aggressively.
It does. You have to strip away all the secondary details, the supporting arguments, the illustrations, what the method might call the twigs, and focus only on the absolute core message. What is the one thing the author absolutely needed the reader to grasp?
Like finding the main clause in a complex sentence.
Good analogy. What's the primary action or teaching? Once you think you have that concise trunk statement, there's a validation step.
Which is?
You have to check it against the book structure. Does every major section, every chapter, logically connect to and support this central trunk you've identified?
So if a chapter seems completely unrelated to your proposed trunk.
Then either your trunk is wrong, Or you haven't yet understood how that seemingly unrelated chapter actually serves the main purpose.
Yeah.
It forces you to reconcile the parts with the whole.
That makes sense. It ensures the trunk isn't just your favorite theme, but the actual unifying principle of the text.
Right. And once that trunk is firmly established, the macro view is secure, then the method allows you to dive back into the details, the micro study, but always relating it back to the trunk.
Okay, so how does that micro-study work?
It's layered. First, chapter analysis, eiodosinase. You summarize each chapter individually, focusing on its specific contribution to the overall trunk.
Then drilling down even further.
Yes, to verse analysis said. Now you're looking at individual sentences or verses, paying close attention to grammar, syntax, word order. How does the specific phrasing shape the meaning within the context of the chapter in the whole book?
So not just what words are used, but how they're arranged.
Exactly. And finally, the most granular level, word analysis. Recognizing that words can have nuances, different shades of meaning depending on context.
Does a key term mean exactly the same thing in Chapter 2 as it does in Chapter 10? Or has the context subtly shifted its meaning?
That's the question. And this is where the method points towards needing more specialized tools for precision.
It's quite a progression. Whole book, trunk, chapters, verses, words. But the key seems to be, get the trunk right before you start interpreting the smaller pieces.
Absolutely critical. Which brings us squarely into the interpretation phase. The rule here is strict.
What's the rule?
You cannot properly interpret any detail, a word, a verse, a paragraph, until you know the trunk, the overall context and purpose of the entire book. Interpretation flows from the whole to the part, never the other way around.
So no pulling verses out of context to support a pet theory.
Never. The mantra is, context determines meaning. Your interpretation of any single verse must align with the chapter's theme, and the chapter's theme must align with the book's overall trunk.
What if your interpretation of a detail seems to contradict the trunk you identified?
Then the interpretation is likely flawed, according to this method. It forces you back to re-examine either your understanding of the detail or your understanding of the trunk. It promotes intellectual honesty, letting the text guide the interpretation, not imposing your own ideas onto it.
It sounds like a system designed to keep the interpreter humble and accountable to the text itself.
Very much so. It requires you to constantly check your assumptions against the larger structure.
Okay, so once you've done the hard work of observation and arrived at a contextually grounded interpretation, then comes the final pillar.
Application. Moving from understanding what it meant then to what it means for you now.
And this isn't just an afterthought, it's a core pillar.
Right. The ultimate goal isn't just intellectual understanding, it's transformation. How does this knowledge change your thinking, your beliefs, or your actions?
Does the source distinguish different kinds of application?
It implies a couple of levels. There's mental application, changing your perspective, adjusting your worldview based on what you've learned. And then there's practical behavioral application, changing how you act, how you live, based on the principles or commands discovered in the text.
So it connects the study directly back to life impact.
Exactly. If the study doesn't lead to some form of application, whether internal or external, the process is considered incomplete. It circles back to the why engage with this text so deeply in the first place. Usually it's for growth or change.
And for those really committed to this rigorous process, especially the detailed word analysis part, the method points to using scholarly resources.
Yes, it doesn't expect you to do this in a vacuum. It specifically mentions tools like Strong's Concordance.
Which isn't just a dictionary, right? It helps you look at the original languages.
Precisely. Strong's links the English words in certain translations back to the original Hebrew or Greek words, providing their definitions and showing where else those original words are used. It allows for a much more precise word study.
So if you're tracking that recurring keyword, Strong's helps you understand its full range of meaning in the original context.
Exactly. It adds a layer of academic rigor. And the source mentions other scholarly works too, like the Expository Dictionary of Old and New Testament Words by Zodiade and the Theological Word Book of the Old Testament.
So it actively encourages integrating serious scholarship into the personal study process.
Definitely. It also mentions specific English translations like the NASB and the KJV.
Why mention specific translations?
It reinforces the idea of comparison. Different translations make different choices. Looking at a couple side by side, perhaps alongside tools like Strong's, helps the student see the nuances and make more informed interpretations. It's about thoroughness.
Using these tools helps ensure the observation is accurate. which leads to sound interpretation, which then supports meaningful application. It all links together.
That's the system. Each stage builds on the last, grounded in the initial deep dive into the whole book.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up for everyone listening. We've walked through this very structured sequential method. Start with deep observation of the whole text, maybe 5, 10, even 20 readings.
Using tools like the 5 W's and H, tracking keywords, maybe color coding.
Then synthesize all that data to find the trunk, the core subject and purpose of the entire book.
Which then allows for disciplined interpretation, ensuring every detail aligns with the whole context.
And finally, moving to application, making sure the understanding translates into actual change or action.
The real strength is that insistence on the whole picture first. Know the forest intimately before you analyze a single tree, let alone a leaf. It's a powerful antidote to superficial reading or taking things out of context.
So here's something for you to think about based on this framework. Consider a complex text that's important in your life or work. Maybe it's a foundational document, a key report, even a piece of literature.
Are you currently understanding, and perhaps applying parts of it, the branches, without having first done the hard work of truly grasping its central trunk, its core unifying purpose?
How might going back, perhaps even rereading it multiple times with the specific goal of finding that trunk, change your entire perspective on what it means and how it should be applied?
Do you know your simple click makes you a worker with the Lord? You become a spreader of light, a savior of souls, and a seeker of the kingdom. Don't wait. Take action now. Like, share, and subscribe.